I was folding the linen curtains in the living room when I heard the front door open. It was a Sunday morning, the kind where sunlight pours through the windows like honey, slow and warm. The house smelled of chamomile tea and old books, the scent of my solitude, my peace. I didn't turn around immediately. I thought it was just Ethan stopping by like he sometimes did, unannounced but welcome. My son, my only child. "Morning, Mom." His voice was light. Too light, the kind of casual tone people use when they're about to deliver news they know will hurt. I've learned to recognize that sound over the years, the artificial brightness that masks something darker underneath. I smiled and glanced over my shoulder, still holding the cream-colored fabric in my hands. The morning light caught the dust particles floating in the air between us. "Good morning, sweetheart. I wasn't expecting you today. Want some coffee? I just made a fresh pot." He walked into the room with his hands buried deep in his pockets, that casual stride he'd had since he was a teenager trying to look confident. But something was off. His shoulders were tense. His eyes didn't meet mine right away. Instead, he stood near the window, looking out at the quiet street lined with maple trees. And for a moment, I thought maybe he was nervous about something. Work troubles, maybe. Or perhaps he wanted to borrow money again. Then he said it. "We're going tomorrow." "Mom, I've sold your beach house." The curtain slipped from my fingers and pooled on the floor like water. Time seemed to stop. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and sharp. I stood there, completely frozen, my brain trying to process what my ears had just heard. "Sold. Your beach house. Tomorrow." The words echoed in my head like they were spoken in a foreign language I didn't quite understand. "What?" The word came out as barely a whisper, my throat suddenly dry. He finally turned to look at me, and there was something in his expression I couldn't immediately place. Was it guilt? Defiance? Relief at finally getting this conversation over with? "The papers are signed, Mom, all of them. The buyers are taking possession next week. I thought it was time, you know? You barely go there anymore, and it's just sitting empty, collecting dust. The maintenance costs alone are ridiculous. The money from the sale will help us. Help you too, actually. I'm setting aside a portion for your retirement fund. Help me?" I felt my chest tighten. My breath caught somewhere between my lungs and my throat. My hands started trembling. That house wasn't just property. It wasn't just walls and a roof and a picturesque view of the ocean. It was the place where I had loved and lost, where I had raised him, where every corner held a memory of his father. It was where I had promised my late husband, on his deathbed, that I would keep our memories alive. You sold it?" My voice cracked, betraying the storm brewing inside me. "Without even asking me? Without even telling me until now?" Ethan shifted his weight from one foot to the other, clearly uncomfortable now, like a child caught doing something he knew was wrong but hoped would be overlooked. "Mom, come on. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. It's been sitting there for years. You visit maybe once or twice a year. If that, it's a waste of a valuable asset." Melissa and I talked it over extensively, and we both agreed. "Melissa?" The name landed in the room like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples of realization through my mind. Of course, his wife. The woman who had slipped into our lives 3 years ago with a practiced smile that never quite reached her cold green eyes, who had slowly, carefully, methodically rewritten the rules of our family. The woman who measured everything by its price tag. I should have seen this coming. The signs had been there all along. "Ethan," I said, and my voice was trembling now, emotion threatening to overwhelm me completely. "That house is not just a piece of land with a structure on it. That house is—" I stopped, because I didn't know how to explain it without breaking down completely, without screaming or collapsing or both. "That's where your father and I built our dreams. That's where you took your first steps. That's where we were a family." "I know, Mom." His tone was sharper now, impatient, like I was being unreasonable, like I was the problem. "But Dad's been gone for 8 years. 8 years. You have to move on eventually. We all do. Life doesn't stop because someone we love died. Move on." As if grief had an expiration date stamped on it like milk in a grocery store. As if love could be filed away like old tax documents and forgotten. As if the promise I made to a dying man meant nothing. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab him by the shoulders and shake him until he remembered who he used to be. The boy who used to collect seashells on that very beach, who used to sit on the wooden porch with his father and watch the stars emerge one by one. The boy who cried for 3 days when his goldfish died because he had such a tender heart, but I didn't scream. I just stood there, staring at this 6-foot-tall man who looked like my son but felt like a complete stranger. "When were you planning to tell me?" I asked quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. "When exactly in this entire process did you think, maybe I should mention this to my mother?" He hesitated, and I saw the guilt flash across his face before he masked it. "I'm telling you now. I thought it would be easier this way, less drawn out. You're telling me the day before I have to pack up 30 years of memories and leave?" He didn't answer. He just looked away toward the window again, his jaw tight, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. He had known exactly what he was doing. This wasn't an oversight. This was calculated. I felt something inside me crack, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, like ice forming on a frozen lake. The kind of break you don't notice at first, but then you realize you're standing on something that's no longer solid, something that could give way at any moment. "Get out," I whispered. "Mom." He took a step toward me, his hand reaching out. "Get out of my house. Ethan. Right now." He stood there for a moment longer, his mouth opening like he wanted to say something, like he wanted to explain or justify or defend himself. But no words came. Maybe he realized there were no words that could fix what he had just broken. Then he turned and walked toward the door, his footsteps heavy on the hardwood floor. The door closed softly behind him. Not a slam, but a quiet click that somehow felt worse. I sank onto the couch, my legs unable to hold me anymore. My hands were trembling violently. My mind was spinning, trying to process the magnitude of what had just happened. How did we get here? How did my son, my sweet, gentle boy who used to bring me flowers he picked from the neighbor's garden, become someone capable of this level of betrayal? And then, beneath the shock and the hurt, another feeling began to rise. Something darker, something colder, something that felt almost like clarity. Because what Ethan didn't know, what no one knew, was that the beach house held more than just memories. It held a secret I had never told him. A secret that changed everything. I remember the day we bought that house like it was yesterday, every detail still vivid and sharp in my mind. It was early spring, late March, I think, and the air smelled like salt and blooming jasmine. The world felt new and full of possibility. My husband, David, had been searching for months. Something by the water, he kept saying. Somewhere we could escape the noise and chaos of the city and just be ourselves. Just be together. When we first saw it, I'll admit, the house was a complete mess. The real estate agent had warned us, but nothing could have prepared us for the reality. Peeling paint hung from the walls in sad, tired strips. The porch sagged dangerously to one side. Weeds had overtaken the little stone pathway to the door, growing wild and thick. Inside, the floors were stained and warped, the windows were cracked, and there was a persistent smell of mildew and abandonment. I turned to David, ready to suggest we leave and look elsewhere. But he was smiling, that wide, boyish smile that had made me fall in love with him 12 years earlier. His eyes were bright with excitement. "This is it," he said, his voice full of absolute certainty, the way he sounded when he knew something in his bones. "This is where we'll grow old together." I laughed, thinking he was joking. "David, it's literally falling apart. The porch looks like it might collapse if we step on it. Then we'll fix it, together. Think about it, Margaret. We can make this exactly what we want it to be. Our own little piece of paradise." He took my hand and pulled me toward the back of the house, toward the weathered door that led to the yard. And then I saw it. The ocean. Endless, sparkling, magnificent. The way the afternoon sun hit the water made it look like liquid gold. The sound of the waves was like a lullaby, constant and soothing. In that moment, standing there with David's hand in mine and the salt air in my lungs, I understood. "Okay," I said softly. "Let's do it." And we did. We spent every weekend for the next 6 months driving out there with paint cans and hammers and toolboxes and dreams. David painted the porch that soft blue color I loved, the color of the sky just before dawn breaks. I planted flowers all along the walkway, lavender, daisies, wild roses that would bloom in the summer. We installed new windows that we found at a salvage yard, sanded the floors until our arms ached, hung white linen curtains that would dance and billow in the ocean breeze. Ethan was just a baby then, barely 8 months old. I would lay him on a thick blanket in the yard while we worked, and he would giggle and squeal at the sound of the waves, reaching his tiny, chubby hands toward the horizon like he was trying to touch it, trying to hold the ocean in his palms. That house became our sanctuary, our escape from the world. We spent every summer there, from Memorial Day through Labor Day. David would wake up early, he was always an early riser, and make blueberry pancakes while I watched the sunrise from the porch, wrapped in one of his old sweatshirts. The sky would turn from deep purple to pink to orange to that brilliant blue that hurts your eyes. Ethan would run barefoot through the sand, building elaborate castles with moats and towers, decorating them with shells and seaweed. He would work on them for hours with such serious concentration, his little tongue sticking out the way it did when he was focused. And then evening would come, and the tide would wash them away, and he would cry, but only for a moment. Because David would crouch down beside him and say, "That's okay, buddy. Tomorrow we'll build an even bigger one." We'd sit around a bonfire at night, the three of us. David would roast marshmallows, always burning them because he got distracted talking. We'd tell stories. We'd sing off-key songs. We'd laugh until our stomachs hurt and our faces ached. Ethan would eventually fall asleep in David's lap, sand still clinging to his little feet, and David would carry him inside and tuck him in. Those were the happiest days of my life. No question, no competition. But happiness, I've learned through bitter experience, is fragile. It can shatter in an instant. David got sick when Ethan was 12 years old. It started small, easy to dismiss, just a cough that wouldn't go away, a tiredness that no amount of rest could fix. "It's just stress from work," he'd say, waving off my concerns. "I'm fine, Maggie." Stop worrying, but I couldn't stop worrying. A wife knows. Some instinct deep inside told me something was wrong. By the time we finally convinced him to see a doctor, by the time they ran the tests and did the scans and called us back into that sterile office with the harsh fluorescent lights, it was too late. Stage 4 lung cancer, metastasized, aggressive. The doctor's words became background noise. I heard fragments. Treatment options, palliative care, 6 months if we're lucky. 6 months. They gave him 6 months to live. He made it to 9 through sheer stubborn willpower, but those final months were brutal. We stopped going to the beach house. David was too weak to travel, confined to a hospital bed we'd set up in our living room. I couldn't bear the thought of being at that place, our happy place, without him. It felt wrong, like betrayal. One afternoon, near the very end, when he was more asleep than awake most days, when the morphine kept him floating in that space between here and gone, he suddenly opened his eyes. They were clear for the first time in weeks, that sharp, bright blue I'd fallen in love with. He reached for my hand with what little strength he had left. His grip was weak, his skin papery and cold. "Promise me something," he whispered, his voice barely audible. I leaned closer, tears already streaming down my face because I knew this was goodbye. "Anything, David, anything in the world. Don't let go of that house. No matter what happens, no matter how hard it gets, promise me you'll keep it." I nodded, unable to speak through my sobs. I promise. I promise." He smiled then, that same smile from the day we first saw the house. "Good, because that place, that's where we were happy. That's where we were us. And I want you to remember that. Even when I'm gone, I want you to go there and remember. Remember us. Remember that we had something beautiful." "I will," I choked out. "I'll never forget. And Ethan. Make sure Ethan remembers too. Make sure he knows his father loved him. That his father loved you both more than anything. He knows. He'll always know." David closed his eyes, that smile still on his face. "I love you, Margaret Ann. I'll love you forever. I love you too. So much." He died 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning while it was raining. I was holding his hand. Ethan was at school. I've always been grateful he wasn't there for that final moment, but also guilty that he didn't get to say goodbye. for a long time after the funeral. After the relatives left and the casserole dishes stopped appearing on my doorstep and life supposedly went back to normal, I couldn't bring myself to go back to the beach house. The thought of it sat heavy in my chest like a stone. That house had been ours, mine and David's, and going there without him felt impossible. It sat empty for almost 2 years, but eventually I returned. I had to. The guilt of breaking my promise gnawed at me. And more than that, I needed him. I needed to feel close to him again. So one morning, I got in the car and drove there. My hands shook the entire drive. When I pulled into the driveway and saw that blue porch, I broke down completely. I sat in the car and sobbed for what felt like hours, but then I got out. I walked up those creaky steps. I opened the door, and I felt him. Not in some mystical, supernatural way, but in the air, in the walls, in every corner of that place. I could hear his voice in my memory, so clear and real. I could see him standing in the kitchen making pancakes, singing off-key to the radio. I could feel his presence like a warm blanket wrapped around me. Being there, even in the silence, even in the grief, felt like coming home. I would sit on that porch for hours, watching the waves crash and retreat in their endless rhythm, and I swear I could still feel his hand in mine. I swear I could still hear him whisper, "We were happy here." That house became more than a building. It became a lifeline. It became the keeper of everything I had lost. So when Ethan told me he had sold it, without asking, without caring, without even considering what it meant, it wasn't just a betrayal of me, it was a betrayal of his father's dying wish. It was erasing the last physical place where David still existed, and somewhere deep inside, beneath the ocean of pain, a question began to burn. What had made my son change so completely? Ethan had always been a kind boy, not just polite or well-behaved, truly kind in that rare way that can't be taught or faked, thoughtful, gentle, empathetic to a fault. He was the type of kid who would stop on his way to school to help an injured bird, carefully placing it in a shoebox and carrying it to the Wildlife Rescue Center. He would share his lunch with the kid who had forgotten theirs at home without being asked. He would cry at sad movies, unashamed. He looked up to his father with the kind of pure admiration that only children can have. He wanted to be just like him, strong, honest, compassionate, fair. After David died, I held on to that. I told myself that as long as Ethan carried those qualities, David lived on. But after David's death, something began to shift in ways I didn't recognize at first. At 12 years old, losing your father carved something out of you. I understood that. I expected the grief, the anger, the confusion. Ethan became quieter, more withdrawn. He stopped talking about his feelings, stopped asking questions about life and death and why bad things happen to good people. He built walls around himself that I couldn't climb, no matter how hard I tried. I took him to a therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Chen, who specialized in childhood grief. He went for 6 months and said all the right things in the sessions, but I could tell he was just performing, going through the motions. The real Ethan stayed locked away somewhere I couldn't reach. By the time he went to college, we had grown distant in a way that broke my heart daily. He called less frequently. Once a week became once every 2 weeks, then once a month. He visited even less. During his sophomore year, he came home for Thanksgiving, but skipped Christmas, saying he had too much studying to do. I told myself it was normal. Kids grow up. They build their own lives. They individuate, as Dr. Chen had explained. It's healthy. It's necessary. But when he met Melissa during his senior year, everything changed in ways I couldn't ignore anymore. He brought her home to meet me over Easter dinner. She was beautiful, I'll absolutely give her that. Tall and slim with perfectly styled blonde hair and expertly applied makeup. Polished, confident, put together in a way that seemed almost calculated. She wore designer clothes. I recognized the labels, even though I'd never owned anything like that myself. The kind of woman who walked into a room and made sure everyone noticed. "Mrs. Dawson, it's such a pleasure to finally meet you," she said, extending a hand with manicured nails. Her smile was perfect, too perfect, practiced. "Ethan has told me so much about you. I tried my best to like her. I really genuinely did. I wanted Ethan to be happy, and if this woman made him happy, then I would embrace her. That's what mothers do. But there was something in the way she looked at things, at the antique clock on the mantel, at my grandmother's jewelry when I showed it to her, at the family photos lining the hallway wall, that made my skin prickle. Her eyes would linger just a bit too long. I could almost see her mind working, calculating, appraising. During dinner, she asked about my financial situation in a way she tried to make sound casual and concerned. Ethan mentioned you're retired now. Are you managing okay? Fixed incomes can be so stressful. I'm managing just fine, thank you, I said, trying to keep my voice warm. And your son tells me you have a beach house, she continued, taking a delicate sip of wine, out on the coast. That must be worth quite a bit in today's market. Beachfront property is such a valuable investment. The word investment landed wrong. That house wasn't an investment. It was a home, a memorial, a promise. It's not for sale, I said firmly. Oh, I didn't mean... She laughed lightly, touching Ethan's arm in a way that seemed possessive. I just think it's wonderful that you have such an asset. You're very fortunate. Most people our age could never dream of owning waterfront property. But I saw it clearly in that moment, the way her eyes had lit up when Ethan first mentioned it. The way her mind immediately went to its market value, the way she looked at me like I was sitting on a gold mine and didn't even realize it. I should have said something then. I should have warned Ethan, but how do you tell your son that you don't trust the woman he loves without pushing him away entirely? So I stayed quiet, and I watched. Over the next 2 years, after they got married in a ceremony that cost more than my first car, Melissa's influence over Ethan became impossible to ignore or deny. He started talking about money constantly, investment opportunities, real estate flips, cryptocurrency, stock portfolios. These weren't things David had ever cared about. David had been a high school teacher. We had lived comfortably but modestly, finding richness in experiences rather than possessions. But this new Ethan spoke a different language. He traded in his reliable Honda for a BMW he clearly couldn't afford. He wore expensive watches, a different one every time I saw him. His clothes had designer labels. He talked about building wealth and securing their future and making smart financial moves. And slowly, carefully, he stopped visiting altogether. Our phone calls became shorter, more perfunctory. Hi, Mom, just checking in. Everything good? Great. I've got to run to a meeting. When I did see him, maybe 3 or 4 times a year, he seemed distracted, distant, like he was physically present but mentally somewhere else. He would glance at his phone constantly, checking messages. He would take calls in the other room, speaking in low tones I couldn't quite hear. I tried to talk to him about it once, about 6 months before he announced the sale of the house. Ethan, honey, is everything okay? You seem stressed. I'm fine, Mom, just busy with work. Are you happy? He looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Of course I'm happy. Why wouldn't I be? I don't know. You just seem different, not like yourself. People change, Mom. That's called growing up. But this wasn't growing up. This was something else, something that felt like loss. Began to notice other things, little things that individually meant nothing but together painted a troubling picture. One evening when he stopped by the house unexpectedly, or so I thought, he left his briefcase on the kitchen table while he used the bathroom. It was open, papers visible inside. I wasn't snooping, not intentionally. I was just tidying up, clearing space for the tea I was making us. But I saw it, a document on top of the stack, official looking, legal. My eyes caught the header before I could stop myself. Sale agreement, coastal property. My heart stopped. I glanced toward the hallway, heard the bathroom door still closed, the water running. My hands trembling, I carefully pulled the document out just enough to see more. It was a contract for my beach house, complete with property description, sale price, terms and conditions. And at the bottom on the seller's line was a signature. My name was printed there, Margaret Ann Dawson, but the signature wasn't mine. It was close, frighteningly close. Someone had studied my handwriting, practiced it, forged it carefully, but it wasn't mine. I knew my own signature, the particular way I looped the M, the specific angle of the D. I felt the room tilt around me. the edges of my vision went dark. He hadn't just planned to sell the house without telling me, he had already started the process. He had forged my signature. He had committed fraud. My own son. I heard the bathroom door open and quickly slid the document back into place. My hands shaking so badly I could barely manage it. Ethan came back into the kitchen, smiling casually. "Thanks for the tea, Mom. I really should get going, though. Melissa's expecting me for dinner." I nodded, not trusting my voice. He grabbed his briefcase, completely oblivious to the fact that I'd just discovered his betrayal. "I'll call you this weekend, okay?" "Okay," I managed to whisper. He kissed my forehead, a gesture that now felt like mockery, and left. I stood in that kitchen for over an hour after he was gone, unable to move, unable to process what I'd seen. My mind was racing, my heart was pounding, and I felt physically sick. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I kept seeing that forged signature, kept trying to understand how we had gotten to this point. How does a son betray his mother like this? How does a gentle boy become a man capable of fraud and deception? And the answer, I realized, was already clear: Melissa. I didn't confront Ethan that night. I couldn't. My mind was spinning too fast, my heart pounding too hard, and I felt like if I opened my mouth, only screams would come out. I needed to think clearly. I needed to understand the full scope of what was happening before I made any moves. So I did what any desperate mother would do. I started digging. The next morning, after a sleepless night where I stared at the ceiling until dawn, I pulled out that sale agreement again. I'd taken a photo of it with my phone while Ethan was in the bathroom, my hands shaking so badly the first two pictures came out blurred. I studied every detail. The buyer's information was listed clearly. Michael and Jennifer Patterson, relocating from Ohio for Michael's new job at a tech company. They had 2 young children. Their offer was $847,000, which was at least $150,000 below market value for beachfront property in that area. They were getting a steal, probably thinking it was their lucky day. These people had no idea the house wasn't legally Ethan's to sell. They were innocent, just a young family excited about their new home by the ocean. My heart ached for them too, knowing they'd be dragged into this mess. But what bothered me most was the price. Why would Ethan sell it so far below value? Unless he needed the transaction to go through quickly. Unless he didn't want anyone looking too closely at the details. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, my reading glasses sliding down my nose, and I started searching. I looked up the investment opportunity. Melissa had mentioned to me in passing during that Easter dinner something about a revolutionary new venture they were getting in on at the ground level. It took me 2 days of searching, but I finally found it. Pinnacle Property Solutions, LLC, the company Ethan and Melissa had supposedly invested in. The website looked professional enough. Sleek design, stock photos of happy investors, testimonials that seemed too good to be true, because they were. I called the phone number listed, disconnected. I looked up the business registration. Filed only 3 months ago, with a registered agent address that turned out to be a UPS store mailbox. I searched for the CEO's name listed on the website. Nothing. The man didn't exist. It was a shell company. A fake. A scam, and Melissa knew it. I kept digging, and what I found made my blood run cold. Using a simple Google search of Melissa's full name, Melissa Catherine Whitmore, I discovered she'd been involved in 2 previous investment schemes. Nothing she'd been charged with, nothing that would show up on a basic background check, but there were traces. Court documents from civil suits, online forum posts from people who'd been scammed. She'd been the girlfriend of 2 different men who'd later been arrested for fraud. She had a pattern. She would find men with assets, with family money, with access to property or inheritance. She would seduce them, marry them, convince them to liquidate assets for fake investment opportunities. Then she'd disappear with the money, leaving them bankrupt and heartbroken. And now my son was her target. I printed everything I found. I created a folder, organized chronologically. Financial records showing the shell company, court documents from her previous victims, screenshots of the website's fake testimonials. I'd even found where the stock photos came from, but I needed more. I needed proof that she was actively manipulating Ethan, that this wasn't just his terrible decision. So I did something I never thought I'd do. Something that made me feel sick with guilt, even as I did it. I broke into their apartment. Not literally. I still had the spare key Ethan had given me years ago. For emergencies. This qualified as an emergency, I told myself. I waited until a Thursday afternoon when I knew they'd both be at work. My hands shook as I turned the key in the lock, and I kept looking over my shoulder, terrified a neighbor would see me and call the police. The apartment was exactly what I expected. Expensive furniture they couldn't afford. Designer items everywhere. But beneath the glossy surface, I could see the cracks. Final notice bills stacked on the desk, credit card statements showing maxed out balances. I found Ethan's laptop in the bedroom. I knew his password. He'd never changed it from the one he'd used since high school. Our old dog's name, Bailey 2009. I felt like a criminal as I opened his email, as I searched through his messages. But what I found justified every moral boundary I was crossing. Emails between Melissa and someone named Derek, her real partner, I realized. Messages that made everything clear. From Melissa to Derek, dated 2 months ago. The beach house is worth at least $1 million. We're listing it under market to move it fast. Once the money hits, we drain the account and disappear. He's so desperate to please me, he'll sign anything. His mother is the only obstacle. She's stubborn. But he's spineless enough that he won't fight back when we cut her out. Derek's response. You sure he won't grow a conscience? Last guy figured it out before we could liquidate. Melissa. This one won't. He's weak. Guilty about his dead daddy. Easy to manipulate. Trust me, we'll be in the Caymans before he realizes what happened. I had to grip the edge of the desk to steady myself. The casual cruelty of it. The calculated manipulation. The way she spoke about my son. My gentle, grieving son. Like he was nothing but a mark. A victim. I took photos of everything with my phone. Every email. Every text message conversation I could find. I went through Melissa's things next. Her desk drawer, her closet, her nightstand. In a locked box under her side of the bed, locked with a cheap combination lock that I managed to open by trying her birthday, I found a burner phone. A second phone she hadn't told Ethan about. The messages on it were even more damning. Conversations with Derek about previous scams, photos of bank statements and wire transfers, a detailed plan written out like a business proposal for how they'd execute Operation Beach House. They'd even discussed what to do if I tried to fight back. Old lady probably doesn't have the resources for a legal battle. Even if she tries, by the time it goes to court, we'll be long gone. At 6 weeks from closing. 6 weeks. They'd planned to disappear in 6 weeks, leaving Ethan devastated and broke. Me without my last connection to David. I photographed everything, my hands steadier now, driven by cold fury rather than shaking fear. But then I found something else. Something that made me realize the betrayal went even deeper, a folder labeled Insurance in Melissa's email. I opened it, life insurance policies. On Ethan. 3 different policies, all taken out within the last year, each for $500,000. Ethan was named as the insured, Melissa as the beneficiary, and in a draft email she'd never sent, saved in her drafts folder, I found the most chilling thing of all. Derek, the policies are in place. 3 different companies so it doesn't raise flags. If the beach house plan falls through, we have a backup. Car accidents are easy to stage. You still have that mechanic contact who can make brake lines fail? Let me know. We might not need it, but good to have options. M. They weren't just planning to steal from him. They were planning to kill him. My son was in danger. Real, immediate danger. I took pictures of everything with trembling hands, my breath coming in short gasps. Then I carefully put everything back exactly as I'd found it, locked the box, and left the apartment. I sat in my car in their parking lot for 20 minutes, my head on the steering wheel, trying to process everything I'd learned. My son wasn't just being manipulated or deceived. His life was in danger, and he had no idea. The betrayal was worse than I'd imagined. This wasn't just about money or property. This was about my son's safety, his life, his future. I drove straight to Robert's office without calling ahead. Robert Chen had been David's best friend and our family lawyer for over 20 years. He'd handled our wills, the beach house purchase, David's estate after he passed. He was someone I trusted absolutely. His secretary tried to tell me he was with a client, but I pushed past her. "I'm sorry, but this is an emergency." Robert looked up from his desk, surprise on his face, but when he saw my expression, he immediately stood. "Margaret, what's wrong?" I closed the door behind me and locked it. Then I pulled out my phone and showed him everything. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each revelation. When I showed him the emails about the potential accident, his jaw tightened. "This is beyond fraud," he said quietly. "This is conspiracy to commit murder. We need to call the police right now." "No," my voice was firm. "Not yet. If we call the police now, Melissa will know I was in their apartment. She'll destroy evidence. She and Derek will disappear before anyone can arrest them. We need to be smarter." Robert studied me carefully. "What do you want to do?" "I want to save my son. I want to stop the sale of my house. And I want Melissa to pay for what she's planning." Those are 3 different objectives with different approaches. Then we do them all. In the right order. I leaned forward. "Can we stop the sale? Legally?" He thought for a moment. "The sale isn't finalized yet. It's still in escrow, pending various inspections and paperwork. If we can prove fraud, and with that forged signature, we absolutely can. We can void the entire transaction. How long will it take?" "I can file an emergency injunction tomorrow morning. With evidence this clear, a judge will grant it. The sale will be frozen immediately." Relief flooded through me. "Okay, good. What about the insurance policies? If we report them, will they investigate?" "Insurance fraud is a serious crime. If we can show intent, and those emails show clear intent, the policies will be voided, and the insurance companies will cooperate with police. And Melissa?" Robert's expression was grim. "With the evidence you've gathered, especially the emails about staging an accident, she's looking at attempted fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and a list of other charges. She'll go to prison for a long time." I took a deep breath. "And Ethan? Will he be charged with anything?" Was he aware of any of this? The fake company, the below-market sale, the insurance policies? I thought about the emails I'd read. Melissa had been careful never to tell Ethan the full truth. She'd fed him lies, manipulated him, but she'd kept him ignorant of the actual criminal plan. "No," I said. "He has no idea. He thinks this is all legitimate. Then he's a victim, not a perpetrator. He won't be charged." "But Margaret," Robert's voice softened, "this is going to destroy him. When he finds out the woman he loves was planning to rob him and potentially kill him, that's going to break something in him." "I know." My voice cracked. "But better broken than dead." Robert nodded slowly. "All right, here's what we'll do." He outlined the plan carefully. "File the injunction to stop the sale. Submit the evidence to the district attorney's office for criminal charges. Contact the insurance companies with proof of fraud. Let law enforcement build their case and make arrests." "How long before Melissa knows something's wrong?" I asked. "The second the injunction is filed, probably within 24 hours. The title company will notify all parties that the sale is frozen pending legal review. So we need to move fast. Very fast. I'll start drafting the paperwork tonight. We'll file first thing tomorrow morning. By tomorrow afternoon, this will be in motion, and there's nothing Melissa can do to stop it." I stood up, feeling stronger than I had in days. "Thank you, Robert. David always said you were the best." He smiled sadly. "David was my friend. Your family. I'll do whatever it takes to protect you and Ethan." As I drove home that evening, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The panic and fear had crystallized into something harder, colder, determination, resolve. Melissa. Thought she was dealing with a naive old woman who'd roll over and accept her son's betrayal. She was about to learn exactly who Margaret Ann Dawson was, and she was going to regret ever targeting my family. Robert moved faster than I'd even hoped possible. By 9 o'clock the next morning, he called me from the courthouse steps. "It's done. The injunction is filed. Judge Morrison reviewed the evidence and granted an emergency freeze on the property sale. The title company is being notified right now." I closed my eyes, relief washing through me like a wave. "Thank you. That's just step 1, Margaret. I've also submitted everything to the district attorney's office. Detective Sarah Kim is handling the case. She's excellent with fraud cases. She wants to meet with you this afternoon to go over everything. I'll be there. And Margaret, she said to tell you that you did good work gathering this evidence. Most people wouldn't have been so thorough. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea I didn't drink, watching it grow cold as I waited. Waited for the phone to ring. Waited for Ethan to call, confused and angry. Waited for everything to explode. It didn't take long. My phone rang at 10:47 a.m., Ethan's name on the screen. I let it ring 3 times before answering, steadying my voice. Hello? Mom, what the hell did you do? His voice was sharp, panicked. I just got a call from the title company. They said the sale is frozen? Something about fraud and a legal injunction? What is going on? I stopped you from making a terrible mistake, I said calmly. A mistake? Mom, we needed that money. Do you have any idea what you've done? I know exactly what I've done. I saved the house your father made me promise to keep. The house you tried to steal from me by forging my signature. Silence on the other end. Long and heavy. I didn't forge anything, he finally said, but his voice wavered. Uncertain. Don't lie to me, Ethan. I saw the paperwork. That's not my signature, and you know it. Melissa said you'd signed it. She said you'd agreed, and then forgotten about it, because you've been so forgetful lately. I have not been forgetful, and I certainly never agreed to sell that house. My voice was harder now. Ethan, listen to me very carefully. You need to come to my house right now, alone, not with Melissa. Just you. Mom, I can't just... Right now, Ethan, this is not a request. I hung up before he could argue. He arrived 40 minutes later, looking disheveled and stressed. His hair was messy, his shirt wrinkled. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't been sleeping well. I let him in without a word and led him to the living room. On the coffee table, I'd laid out printed copies of everything I'd found. Every email, every text message, every piece of evidence of Melissa's betrayal. Sit down, I said. Mom, what is all this? Sit down. He sat, his eyes scanning the papers on the table. I watched his face as he began to read. Confusion first, then disbelief. Then horror. This can't be real. Where did you get these? From Melissa's email, from her secret phone, from the evidence she was careless enough to leave lying around. His hands were shaking as he picked up the printed emails. I watched him read the one where Melissa called him weak and spineless, where she described him as easy to manipulate, where she laid out the plan to steal everything and disappear. No, he whispered. No, you faked these. You're making this up because you're angry about the house. Look at the metadata, Ethan. Look at the dates, the email addresses. I didn't fake anything. This is real. He kept reading, his face growing paler. When he got to the emails about the life insurance policies, his hands started trembling so badly he almost dropped the papers. She took out life insurance on me? 3 policies, $500,000 each, and read the next one. I watched him read the email about staging an accident, about brake lines failing, about their backup plan if the house sale fell through. He made a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. She was going to kill me, he whispered. She was planning to... Oh God, oh God. He stood up abruptly, stumbling toward the bathroom. I heard him being sick. I sat there, my heart breaking for him, even as a grim satisfaction settled in my chest. He needed to know. He needed to see the truth, no matter how much it hurt. When he came back, his face was ashen, his eyes red. He sank onto the couch and put his head in his hands. How could I be so stupid? He said, his voice muffled. How did I not see it? I sat down beside him and put my hand on his back, rubbing gentle circles the way I used to when he was a child having nightmares. She's a professional con artist, sweetheart. This is what she does. She's done it before, to other men. You're not stupid. You were manipulated by someone very skilled at manipulation. But the house... Dad's house? I sold Dad's house. He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. How could I do that to you? How could I break the promise Dad made you make? You didn't know what you were doing. She poisoned your mind against me. She made you think it was the right choice. That doesn't excuse it. I should have talked to you. I should have listened when you tried to tell me something was wrong. I chose her over you, and she was going to... He couldn't finish the sentence. She's not going to do anything anymore, I said firmly. The police are building a case against her right now. She'll be arrested soon. The police? He looked panicked. Am I going to be arrested too? No, you're a victim in this. You didn't know about the fraud, the fake company, any of it. The evidence shows that clearly. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, does she know yet? That we found out? The title company will have notified her about the frozen sale. She knows something's wrong, but she probably doesn't know we have evidence of everything else yet. As if on cue, Ethan's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and his jaw tightened. It's her. She's calling. Don't answer. It buzzed again. Then again, text messages started flooding in. Melissa, where are you? Why aren't you answering? Melissa, the title company called. What did your mother do? Melissa, Ethan, answer me right now. Melissa, if you're with her, you need to leave. She's trying to poison you against me. Melissa, Ethan, answer your phone. He turned the phone face down on the table, not looking at it. I loved her, he said quietly. At least I thought I did. Or maybe I loved who I thought she was. But the woman who wrote those emails, I don't even know her. I know, honey. I know. My phone rang. Detective Kim, Mrs. Dawson? We have a problem. Melissa Whitmore just purchased a plane ticket to the Cayman Islands. She's flying out tomorrow morning. We need to move now if we want to arrest her before she flees. What do you need from me? Can you and your son come to the station right now? We need his statement, and we need to move fast on a warrant. I looked at Ethan. He nodded, wiping his face. We'll be there in 20 minutes. At the police station, Ethan gave his statement. He told them everything, how Melissa had convinced him to sell the house, how she'd shown him proof that I'd signed the paperwork, how she'd talked about the investment opportunity that would set them up for life. Detective Kim listened carefully, taking notes. She was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with short dark hair and an air of competence. Mr. Dawson, did your wife ever discuss taking out life insurance policies on you? Ethan shook his head. No, I didn't even know about those until my mother showed me today. Did she have access to your personal information? Social security number, bank accounts? Yes, we're married. She has access to everything, Detective Kim nodded. That's how she was able to take out the policies without your direct involvement. She forged your signature on the applications. Can you arrest her? I asked. We're getting the warrant right now. We'll pick her up tonight before she has a chance to run. She looked at Ethan. Mr. Dawson, I need to ask, are you currently staying with your wife? Yes. Our apartment. I'd recommend you don't go back there tonight. We'll be executing the warrant around 6 p.m. It could get complicated. Ethan looked at me. Can I stay with you, Mom? Of course you can. You always have a home with me. We went back to my house and waited. I made dinner, pasta, his favorite, the way I used to make it when he was young. We ate in near silence, the weight of the day hanging heavy between us. At 6:47 p.m., Detective Kim called. We have her in custody. She tried to run when she saw us coming, but we caught her in the parking lot. Her partner, Derek, was with her. We got him too. I closed my eyes, relief flooding through me. Thank you. We found more evidence in their apartment. Bank statements showing other victims, more forged documents, detailed plans for the insurance fraud. This case is airtight. They're both going away for a long time. After I hung up, I told Ethan. He nodded slowly, not speaking, just staring at his hands. It's over, I said softly. Is it? He looked at me with hollow eyes. The legal part might be over, but the rest of it... Mom, I destroyed us. I tried to sell the house Dad loved. I chose that woman over you. I was so horrible to you and you saved my life anyway. That's what mothers do. How can you forgive me? I took his hand. Because you're my son. Because I know the real you, the kind, gentle boy who grew into a good man. She took advantage of your grief, your vulnerability. But that doesn't define who you are. I don't know who I am anymore. Then we'll figure it out. Together. He leaned his head on my shoulder, and I held him while he cried, deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to come from somewhere ancient and wounded. My son was broken. But broken things can heal, and I would be there for every step of that healing. The legal proceedings moved surprisingly quickly. With the overwhelming evidence, Melissa's public defender advised her to take a plea deal. She was sentenced to 12 years for fraud, conspiracy, attempted insurance fraud, and identity theft. Derek got 15 years as the mastermind of their operation. I attended the sentencing. Ethan didn't want to go, but I felt I needed to see it through. Needed to look her in the eye one last time. Melissa was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hands cuffed in front of her. Gone was the polished, confident woman who'd walked into my home 3 years ago. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, her face bare of makeup, her eyes hard and cold. When the judge read the sentence, she didn't react. Didn't cry or protest or show any remorse. She just stared straight ahead, jaw tight. But as they led her out, she looked directly at me. And she smiled. It was a small, bitter smile that said, "I may have lost, but I still hurt you. I still broke your son." I smiled back. A warmer smile, one that said, "But we survived, and you didn't win." Her smile faltered. Then she was gone, led through a door to begin her 12 years. I walked out of that courthouse into bright sunshine, took a deep breath of free air, and felt something lift from my shoulders. A weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying, it was truly over. The beach house was officially returned to my name. The Pattersons, the innocent buyers, were disappointed but understanding when I explained the situation. I felt terrible for them. So I helped them find another property nearby. Not quite as perfect as mine, but close. And I even negotiated with the seller on their behalf to get them a fair price. Jennifer Patterson sent me a beautiful thank you note. "You didn't have to help us after everything you've been through. But you did anyway. That's the kind of person we hope our children grow up to be." I put that note on my refrigerator, a reminder that even in the darkness, there's kindness. Ethan moved back in with me temporarily while he put his life back together. The apartment he'd shared with Melissa held too many toxic memories. We donated most of the furniture, the expensive pieces she'd insisted on that he couldn't really afford, and he kept only what mattered: his father's watch, his books, his photographs from childhood. He was quiet in those first weeks, subdued. He started seeing a therapist, a different one this time. A man named Dr. Marcus, who specialized in trauma and manipulation recovery. He went twice a week, and slowly, gradually, I began to see glimpses of my real son emerging from the shell Melissa had built around him. One Saturday morning, about 6 weeks after Melissa's sentencing, I found him in the kitchen making pancakes, blueberry pancakes specifically, the way David used to make them. "I thought maybe we could go to the beach house today," he said, not looking at me, his voice uncertain. "If you want. I'd understand if you didn't want me there. After everything, I'd love that," I interrupted. "I'd really love that." We drove out that afternoon, the windows down, the late spring air warm and sweet. Ethan was quiet during the drive, staring out at the passing landscape. I didn't push him to talk. I just let him be. When we pulled into the driveway and he saw the house, the blue porch, the wild roses I'd planted decades ago, now growing in tangled profusion, the sound of waves just beyond, he stopped walking. "Dad painted that porch," he said quietly. He did. That exact shade of blue. He painted it 3 times to get it right, I remember. I was little and I tried to help, and I got more paint on myself than on the wood. I smiled. "You looked like a little blue ghost. Your father laughed so hard he cried." We walked up the creaky steps together. I unlocked the door, the same lock David had installed 30 years ago, still working perfectly, and we went inside. The house smelled like salt air and old wood and memories. Dust motes floated in the sunlight streaming through the windows. Everything was exactly as I'd left it the last time I'd visited, months ago. Ethan walked through slowly, touching things. The kitchen table where we'd played cards on rainy days. The bookshelf full of beach reads and David's mystery novels. The couch where we'd all squeezed together to watch movies. He stopped in front of a photo on the wall. The 3 of us, Ethan maybe 7 years old, David and me on either side of him, all of us sun-kissed and grinning. The ocean behind us. "We were happy," he said softly. "We were. I'm so sorry, Mom, for all of it, for trying to sell this place, for not listening to you, for choosing her over you and Dad's memory. Ethan, I put my hand on his arm. I forgive you. I forgave you the moment I saw those emails and realized you were a victim too. You don't have to keep apologizing. I feel like I'll never apologize enough. Then stop apologizing and start living. That's what your father would want. He'd want you to learn from this and move forward. We walked out onto the back porch, the one that overlooked the ocean. The waves were gentle today, rolling in with a soft, rhythmic sound. The sun was starting to lower toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. We sat on the old wooden chairs David had built, weathered now, but still sturdy. Do you feel him here? Ethan asked suddenly. Dad, do you feel like he's here? Every time I come here, I said honestly. Not in a supernatural way, but in the way that places hold memories, in the way that love leaves an imprint. Ethan was quiet for a long time, watching the waves. Then, I think I forgot him for a while. Not on purpose, but Melissa kept talking about the future, about building wealth, about moving forward. And somewhere in all that, I stopped looking back. I stopped remembering what was important. You remember now. That's what matters. I want to help you with this place, he said suddenly, turning to look at me. Maintenance, repairs, whatever you need. I want to take care of it the way Dad did, if you'll let me. My throat tightened with emotion. I'd like that very much. And Mom. His voice was uncertain again. Would it be okay if I came here sometimes? Even when you're not here? I think I need to reconnect with him. With who I used to be? I reached over and took his hand. This house is as much yours as it is mine. It's our family home. You're always welcome here. We sat there as the sun set, father and son reunited in spirit through the place he'd loved most. The waves crashed and retreated in their eternal rhythm. And for the first time in months, I felt peace. Real, deep, unshakable peace. The house was safe. My son was healing. The woman who'd tried to destroy us was gone. We'd survived the storm. As darkness fell, Ethan and I went inside and lit a fire in the old stone fireplace. We made tea and sat together, not talking much, just being present, being together. Around 9 o'clock, Ethan's phone buzzed. He looked at it and smiled. Actually smiled. The first genuine smile I'd seen from him in what felt like years. It's the Pattersons. Jennifer sent a photo of their new house. They moved in today. He showed me the picture, a cheerful family of 4 on their front porch, the ocean visible in the background. That's wonderful, I said. See, something good came from all this mess. Did it, though? He looked at me seriously. I mean, really, I put you through hell. I tried to sell your most precious possession. I chose a criminal over you. What good came from that? You came back, I said simply. You're here now. You're healing. And our relationship, maybe it's different than it was before, but it has a chance to be stronger, more honest. That's good, Ethan. That's something worth holding on to. He nodded slowly. I'm going to spend my life making this up to you. Just be my son. That's all I've ever wanted. That night, Ethan slept in his old room, the one with the window facing the ocean. I heard the floorboards creak as he walked around, probably looking at his old things I'd kept there. His childhood drawings on the walls, his collection of seashells on the dresser. Around midnight, I got up to get water and saw light under his door. I knocked softly. Come in, he said. He was sitting on the bed, holding something. As I got closer, I saw it was an old photo album. I found this in the closet, he said. I forgot we had so many pictures. I sat beside him, and we looked through them together. Ethan as a baby, chubby and laughing. Ethan learning to walk on this very beach. Birthday parties and holidays and ordinary days that had become extraordinary through the lens of memory. And David. Page after page of David, young and healthy, smiling at the camera, his arm around me or holding Ethan or just being present in our lives. I miss him, Ethan whispered. I miss him so much, and I feel like I wasted so much time not honoring his memory. You're honoring it now. By being here, by remembering, by becoming the man he hoped you'd be. We stayed up until almost 2 a.m, looking at photos and telling stories. Ethan laughed at some, really laughed, the sound filling the room with joy. And he cried at others, letting himself feel the grief he'd been avoiding for years. When we finally said goodnight, He hugged me tight. "Thank you for not giving up on me, Mom. Thank you for saving me." "Always," I whispered. "Always." I still live in that beach house for half the year now. Spring through fall, I'm here, watching the seasons change over the ocean. The porch still creaks under my feet. That same board, third from the left, that David always meant to fix but never did. The paint is peeling again in places, showing the layers underneath like rings in a tree. Blue upon blue upon blue. I kind of like it that way. It feels lived in, real, honest about its age and its history. Ethan visits often now, every other weekend at least, sometimes more. He's rebuilding his life slowly, carefully. He got a new job, a modest apartment, a used car instead of the BMW. He's learning to measure his worth by different standards than Melissa taught him. Sometimes we sit on the porch for hours without talking, just watching the waves and drinking tea. Sometimes we talk about everything, his therapy sessions, his struggles, his small victories. He's learning to forgive himself, which is harder than forgiving others, I think. Last month, he brought someone to meet me, a woman named Claire, a kindergarten teacher with kind eyes and a genuine smile. She wore old jeans and sneakers, and she laughed at his jokes without pretense. When she saw the beach house, she said, "This place feels like love." I liked her immediately. I've learned so much through this whole terrible, beautiful experience. I've learned that love can blind you, that family can hurt you in ways strangers never could, and that the people you trust most are sometimes the ones who break you. But I've also learned that you can survive that breaking. You can rebuild piece by piece. You can find peace in the wreckage. I've learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing. It means choosing not to let bitterness poison what's left of your life. I've learned that keeping promises to the dead matters, not because they'll know if you break them, but because those promises connect you to love that transcends death. And I've learned that the sea, with all its storms and stillness, always teaches the same lesson. What they take from you will return in time in ways you never expected. Not the same way, not the same form, but return nonetheless. Ethan returned to me, different but real. The house remained mine, safe and whole, and David's memory lives on, not just in walls and waves, but in the man our son is becoming. Sometimes what you lose becomes the very thing that sets you free. Free from illusions, free from false relationships, free to see clearly what actually matters. Did you like my story? Which city are you listening from? I'd love to hear from you. Because sometimes the bravest thing we can do is survive, rebuild, and remember that after every storm, the sun breaks through.